What's up, Unlocking Your Inner Strength listeners? How would you like to know how to banish the myth of multitasking from your brain forever? Well, I got good news for you. I've put together a special report showing you exactly how to do this. Normally it's $45, but since you're a loyal listener of the show, you can get it for only $10 at unlockingyourinnerstrength.com/time.
You're listening to the Inner Strength Show. If you want to step into your greatness, you've come to the right place. Here is your host, the human strength expert, Kyle Newell.
Hey everybody, it's Kyle from Unlocking Your Inner Strength and unlockingyourinnerstrength.com, back with episode number 51. And yes, there is going to be an element of Tool Boy in this episode. When I was, 20 years old, the Wolverine used to train at the same gym as me. Now, at this point, we hadn't yet become buddies. The Wolverine was this jacked, at that time, early 30s dude, tattoos everywhere, competed in bodybuilding, just kind of this mythical dark figure, very quiet. And he was in the gym post-bodybuilding show on the bench press. And one of my best friends, Jabba Juice, happened to be there. Wolverine was repping out on the bench press, and bam, his pec exploded. He's screaming according to both sides. I've talked to him about it and talked to Jabba about it. Luckily, Jabba was there because of midday, nobody else was in the gym. So he's screaming. Jabba goes over, lifts it off of him, and Wolverine is kind of distraught. Now, what happened was he ruptured his pec tendon, came off the bone. An instant black and blue. That's what happens, right? Whole arm is black within a matter of hours. So he drove himself to the hospital despite having a 2-week-old daughter at the time. He opted not to have surgery, and you can see it's still a little deformed. It's not quite right, but it's functional. And that was the first time I'd heard of somebody actually getting injured like that in the gym. So how does this tie into Tool Boy? A little backstory on Tool Boy. Tool Boy is a real character. I've said that before, and I'll say it again. A real person. Now, to Tool Boy's credit, he's become much more self-aware and much less of a jackass. The thing is, there's always going to be Tool Boys out there. Tool Boy is somebody who has no self-awareness, very ego-centered, ignorant, look at me, says the wrong things at the wrong times. Just somebody that you kind of like, man, I was just near that person. Now I got to go take a shower. So this new Tool Boy, someone I've known for a long time, competes in bodybuilding shows. And to his credit, he's just misguided. I don't think he ever had a strong male figure in his life. But I've known him since he was a kid. He's known me since I was a teenager. And he is what I would call the ultimate millennial. Now, a little side rant here. If you took anybody from World War II, you took my grandfather Leo, who's still strong as an ox, World War II vet, he would beat the piss out of any of these millennials. It's the softest generation in the history of the country. And I blame a lot of that on social media. Now, most of my listeners are my age, somewhere in that ballpark, or older. Not all of them. Which means we didn't grow up with social media. I didn't grow up with a cell phone. I didn't have a cell phone until I was going to my senior year of college, and then it was just to communicate very briefly with my girlfriend at the time or my parents. But that cell phone did come in handy. That first summer when I had it, when I was fishing, and my fish hook went right into the king, who was one of my best friends' eye. That's another story for another time. Maybe if we have time at the end of today, I'll tell you about that story. Pretty wild. Which, going back to these millennial generation, though, they're so sensitive. It's a very bizarre thing because their identity and self-image is all wrapped up in this social media. Social media is cool, but I don't give two craps what people think about me on there. I really don't. People are just too soft. So you take anybody from that World War II generation, they beat the piss out of anybody. I don't care the size difference or whatever of these millennials. So that's just something off the top of my head. So yes, Tool Boy is a millennial as well, the ultimate millennial. Always posting stuff on Facebook. Stuff that is clearly just to get attention. And he does get attention. He gets a lot of people to comment. Now, as of late, he's started venturing further and further into the fitness world or strength world, meaning he's trying to talk about topics he's not qualified to really talk about in the way that he's trying to talk about them. So here and there, I've been dropping comments just refuting what he's saying, being like, you can't just make stuff up. Here's the facts. Here's the science. Well, recently, he put up something, he's a personal trainer, that I can't believe when I see trainers in the gym having their clients do a 1-rep max. So foolish. The risk is just way too high. So I thought about that. I'm saying, agreed that most personal trainers are not worth a piece of paper. They're not worth a pen. I mean, they're a dime a dozen. But it's not that they're having people do 1-rep maxes. It's that they don't know how the human body works, how the human body moves, and they have them use crappy form on everything. So then I made a comment, boom, going back and forth. I'm having fun with it. And that's another thing. Millennials, and I don't care if I fall in the age range of a millennial. I'm not a millennial when it comes to character. Millennials like to communicate through rhetoric, okay? So they like emotions. They don't like facts. As soon as you start throwing facts at them, they try to throw back more emotions, which gets quite amusing. Whereas I like to communicate with dialect, logical. All right, here's what you're thinking. Here's how you feel. And put that aside. Boom. Here's the facts. So I could tell he was starting to get upset that I was dropping facts on him, dropping knowledge bombs on him. And this was a battle he was not going to win because, number one, I'm smarter than him. I don't care if that sounds arrogant. And number two, I have way more experience than him. But then I started piecing together, why was he saying this? Why was he saying that he sees all these people getting injured doing 1-rep maxes? Because it's just not true. When a Wolverine ripped his peck, or when my best friend, the King, who happens to be in this story twice, how crazy is that? So the King, a couple years after I hooked his eye with the fish hook, was in the gym doing dumbbell bench, and he ripped his pec like 5 weeks before the police academy. And the guy's tough because he actually went through the entire police academy shortly after having surgery on that. So he did have surgery, but he was doing higher reps. It wasn't a 1-rep max on the dumbbell bench press, which would be stupid anyway. Which kind of brings me back to my point. When are you most likely to get injured when you're working out? Well, there's certain circumstances. When you lose focus, you put yourself at increased risk of getting injured. Higher reps is usually where you're going to get injured, not 1-rep maxes. So the points I made to this tool boy were, first of all, if a new client, a novice client, were to do a 1-rep max, which I wouldn't recommend, they can't exert enough force to get injured on it. Their nervous system is not wired that way. Now, yes, you got to watch their form, but they're just simply not going to get injured from the load. Secondly, if you YouTube, if you have the stomach for it, or Google pec tears while benching, you'll see majority of them are from higher reps. It's, the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th rep where the guy's pec will snap, or female. It's not on a 1-rep max. So you're more likely to get injured when we're fatigued. Okay. And lastly, you're very likely to get injured when the muscle is at a mechanical disadvantage. So the reason I think a lot of machines are stupid, like if I'm doing a machine chest press, it's starting me in the fully stretch position of that muscle, which is the weakest point of that muscle. So you're putting it in a very vulnerable position. So you'll see more pec tears or whatever, even if we're talking about knees on machines, or when you're at the vulnerable position, you'll see more tears at that point. Which, an offshoot, if you ever wonder why guys use and girls use chains and bands, it's accommodating resistance. So if I use chains on my bench, it's a different form of bench. But at the top of the movement, I'm at my strongest. My muscles have an optimal resting length. At the bottom of the movement, I'm at my weakest, just as you would be at the bottom of your bench press or squat, because your muscles are not at optimal resting length. So you're weaker at the bottom, stronger at the top. So if you're using chains for accommodating resistance, as you're pressing up, as your strength's increasing, the chains are coming off the ground, and they're kind of going in step with your natural increase in strength curve. So that's one reason to use chains. What's up, Unlocking Your Inner Strength listeners? How would you like to know how to banish the myth of multitasking from your brain forever? Well, I got good news for you. I've put together a special report showing you exactly how to do this. Normally it's $45, but since you're a loyal listener of the show, you can get it for only $10 at unlockingyourinnerstrength.com/time. Speed work also rejuvenates the central nervous system. So if you're feeling really banged up, you can do some speed work as far as moving weights faster, lighter weights. So power is force times velocity. Power is not using a super heavy weight. It's moving a moderate weight fast. So just some food for thought. Now, both times that I've blown out my patellar tendons have been on the basketball court in a quote-unquote unpredictable environment, movements I didn't know I was going to have to perform at the time, explosive movements, which goes back further to my point, which I asked this tool boy. So you're saying if that's the case, I've seen much more injuries on the softball field than I have in the gym, then we should have all these guys and girls that are in their 30s, mid-30s, as you say, tool boy. They should stop playing any recreational sport. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the risk with the 1 rep max is too high. Well, that doesn't make sense. The science doesn't back that up. So controlled environments are very big because the brain is tied to movement, right? You can't separate this. It's not isolate this muscle. It's how does the brain perceive the movement pattern? Now, if we have mechanical disadvantages or faulty movement patterns, then yes, you're going to be at more chance of an injury. But it's usually going to be a chronic injury like tendinitis or tendinosis, some kind of inflammation. It's not going to be a rupture, tennis elbow, things of that nature, golfer's elbow, Achilles tendinitis. So that's another thing. Now, I will say, coming off of one of my bodybuilding shows in 2005, I had a pretty good pec tear. Did not come off the bone, but the muscle opened up. Obviously, never had surgery or anything. And then about 3 months ago, when I was benching, it re-aggravated it. So I took a month off from bench and kind of really got in there and worked on the scar tissue. And it feels all good now. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is because, yes, I was going heavy. And when the Wolverine got hurt as well, he was coming off a bodybuilding show. So coming off a bodybuilding show when it's not the best time to train intensely. I always tell guys, take off a couple weeks, work back into it. Your muscles will be in the super compensation mode. So the muscles are going to rapidly expand after the show once you start eating, filling up with glycogen and intramuscular fat and fluid. Now, the tendons and ligaments don't grow at that rate. They can't absorb, right? So you're going to put them in a very bad position if the muscles can produce more force than these tendons and ligaments are able to handle. So that's why anabolic steroids a lot of times will cause tendon ruptures or ligament tears, and you're seeing it more and more in the pros. And that goes back to my point, which I've always said, 95% of pro athletes are using steroids. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a fact. Now, regular testosterone and many of the anabolic steroids, all based on testosterone, degrade the synthesis, collagen synthesis, meaning your muscles are going to get bigger and more forceful, but your tendons and ligaments are going to start to shrivel and degrade and become the tendons of like a senior citizen. So you have big, powerful muscles, tendons of a senior citizen. Guess what's going to happen, right? So out of all the research I'd done after I did my first knee, and I was really struggling with the recovery, I came across different compounds of testosterone. Equipoise is my favorite, which increased collagen synthesis up to 300%. So just some food for thought there as well. When you start seeing these guys, I'm not going to make this. I'll talk, like I said, with Dr. Dave about hormones and whatnot. But when you start seeing all these pro athletes with injuries that are kind of unusual or freak, that's what's going on. Now let's go back to Tool Boy. So now you know when you're more likely to get injured in a gym. Also when you're dehydrated, let me say. We want fluid in the joints. We want fluid in the joints and the low back and the discs. With this Tool Boy, I made the point then. I said, look, just because you're scared to do a 1 rep max and you're an advanced lifter, you've been lifting a long time, you compete in bodybuilding, doesn't mean other people shouldn't do it. So, oh yeah, I'm scared, LOL. I said, you already said you're scared of getting hurt. You've already stated as much. But because you're too weak mentally to put yourself up against something where you might fail, you decide it's dangerous to do. Nobody should do it. And that's a safe way to play it, but it's also being a big you-know-what. This is how Tool Boys operate, though. When they're scared of something, they justify it where nobody should do this. It's not safe. Play it safe. No. Don't follow a Tool Boy's lead in that example. And I believe Tool Boy was put in his place because he no longer commented on my last comment on there. Again, I was having fun with it, but I can use it as material for emails or for podcasts and all that. So keep an eye out for any Tool Boy examples that you want to share with me that I can use when I'm talking about Tool Boy. So you have 2 lessons to take away from this episode. When are you most likely to get injured? And it's not in the gym. I'm telling you that. It's not in the gym. The chance of injury in the gym is actually extremely low, especially if you have a good coach. I can count on one hand the times I've seen injuries in the gym. I can count on 2 fingers the times I've seen nasty injuries in the gym. And I talk with people all over the world about this because I do a lot of help with people with knee injuries, severe knee injuries. And the second thing you want to take away from this is that Tool Boys are going to try to deter you from living a great life and doing great things because they're scared to act and they're scared to put themselves up against failure. Not realizing that you need to have failure to succeed, to grow stronger. It's like a callus on your hand. Apply the stress. It's going to hurt at first. You're not ready for it. Boom, comes back bigger and tougher and stronger. Now that's all I have for this episode. I will open up next episode, the 1 year anniversary of unlocking your inner strength with the fishing hook story and the king's eyeball, because it's pretty amazing. If you have not already done so, please leave a review on iTunes. If you like it, leave it 5 stars. Please share these episodes with friends that might be able to use a positive message. It's something simple. I keep them short. You can listen to it on the way to work. They can listen to it on the way to work. And I try to keep them entertaining. If there's something better you want me to do on these, please let me know. And lastly, if you'd like a free digital download of the $47 per month Unlocking Your Inner Strength newsletter, you can go to unlockingyourinnerstrength.com/N as in no, L as in love, and you can download your free copy there. It's valued at $47. There will be changes coming with the newsletter too. I'll be announcing that shortly. And that's all I got for you. I'll see you next week for the 1 year anniversary show. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to The Inner Strength Show. If you enjoyed the show, remember to subscribe, rate, and review us in iTunes.